And now, here's the veteran voice of the legal fix, Bruce Buffer.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live from the Lone Star State in Montgomery County, Texas, for a brand new episode of the Legal Fix, a new age radio show presented by the Tough Law Firm, the toughest law firm in town, with the toughest lawyers around, answering your toughest legal questions. Introducing first, hosting out of the red corner, the big deal, Bruce Colson. Tough, joined by Boy Wonder, Brandon Scott Riley, and super lawyer, G.I. Jerome, the Golden Boy, Jeremy Lee Hall.
Thank you, Bruce Buffer. I am the Golden Boy, super lawyer, G.I.
Looking
Jerome,
extra golden.
Jeremy Hall. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm here with Boy Wonder, B-Dubs, Brandon Riley, sans the big deal. No big deal today. No deal.
Deal or no
Bruce
deal.
Tough. He's on a pilgrimage to the motherland.
To the Mother Hubbard land.
Yeah, to the homeland. If you have a question, you can call our hotline, 936-900-2381. We would love to hear from you. Today we are discussing student loan forgiveness. Biden is making waves, making headlines. Is it fair? Who does it hurt? Could Biden have built back better with incentives for teachers?
Good thing we're talking about this while Bruce isn't
officials?
here.
Yeah, he would get riled up. Then in
we
the second
wouldn't make it out
segment,
of the first segment.
we're going to talk about some practical things, how to read a contract, contract terms, common terms. Can you write on a contract? Is that effective? Can you just scratch something out? Do you have to initial it? Does it have to be in red pen? Does it have to be formal? Does an oral agreement count? Like Borat says, what did men oral? Popular terms, fully integrated clauses, choice of law, forums, binding arbitration, notice provisions. BW, here's your question du jour. What's the mailbox rule?
Mailbox rule states that when a document is placed in the mail, not when it's received in the mail, is the date of acceptance. So if you have a contract that has a firm date, and at that point in time, on the day that the contract would expire, the offer would expire, you sign it, slap it with a sticker, and they stamp it as having been postmarked that day, but it doesn't arrive for another week, and they've moved on saying, well, the contract never was brought to fruition.
Postmarked. You said put it in the mail. So if I ride my horse to the mailbox Friday at 11 a.m. and the mail has just come, it doesn't come on Saturday or Sunday, and I put a letter in it, and it doesn't get picked up until Monday, did I give notice on Friday?
Probably not, and the reason not is because you have to have some form of proof that that's when it was delivered.
I took a picture.
Well, you may be able to get the picture in. I doubt it, though.
I took a selfie with me and my horse and a newspaper, putting it in the mailbox.
I would just take the bus next time then. The horse took too long.
I don't want to get too caught up on
But technically, that's what the rule is, right?
Okay,
Snail
mailbox
mail or
rule.
not, the mailbox
It's when
rule
you
states-
put it in the mail, not when the person receives it on the receiving end. That's got to be aggravating for the receiver.
Yeah, but we live in a modern society now where you can Dropbox it
email it.
over, you can do
Dropbox
Adobe
it,
Sign.
right.
What
It's
is
not
the
a-
other one we use also? The other signature,
Email?
electronic signature.
DocuSign, Adobe Sign? Yeah, DocuSign.
Yeah.
Okay, so that second segment, we're going to talk contract terms. We'll show you some of those popular contract terms, try to equip you to be better contract readers and understanders. And then in the third segment, BW, what are we doing?
In the third segment, we will discuss some very interesting, salacious news. As a matter of fact, Kevin Spacey is going on trial October 6th for the alleged rape or sexual assault of Jordan Rapp, I believe was his name. Let me look up his name again. But very interesting. This was a big deal. This kind of ended the cards fell in House of Cards when this report came out, and now all these years later, he's going on trial on October 6th.
I was one person to say that I'm not surprised because he is he plays such weird characters.
Yeah.
You knew it had to be a little bit close to his real personality.
Right.
because he's just so immersed in these crazy characters that also have these swinging sexual preferences. They're a little bit edgy, they're bad, they're devious, and it turns out that's the real him.
I think so. I mean, there were a lot of reports against him. So this one going forward, I think it is interesting. Just as a preview, this was in 1986 that it occurred. So you're talking about a lifetime ago, literally.
I mean, I am sad to hear it. I don't think anyone should be excused of that type of behavior, but I love him as an actor. He's one of my favorites. So it's sad for me to see him potentially go away and not be able to perform his craft anymore.
Fall from grace.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, let's get back
Moving
to
on.
student loan forgiveness. BW, the Republicans are saying that this is bad. It's not fair. It's a handout. Undeserved. We're writing off people's debt. My uncle has this theory that it's a violation of the revenue clause because we are, in fact, in essence, spending money by writing off this debt when Biden is forgiving these student loans and that power belongs to Congress. What say you? Is this good or is this bad? First of all, what's happening? People are getting student loans forgiven, but not all of it. It's $10,000.
Up to 20.
Up to 20 if you
Yeah.
had a Pell Grant, which means you were low income.
Right.
You needed money more than most.
Right.
So we're forgiving $20,000 ahead. Biden's doing it. People
long
are
as you-
celebrating. Some people are mad, though.
And the rules as they have it set up right now, which are not formal yet, obviously this is still a work in progress, and they're still developing how they're going to implement this. But if you make $125,000 or less, or $250,000 and less as a couple, so individual 125, couple 250 is the cutoff. Otherwise, you don't qualify. So you have to make less than those dollar amounts, and then you would qualify for up to 20 on a Pell Grant, up to 10 on anything else. And as they pointed out, up to meaning that if you only owe 6, you're not going to get 10 back because it's technically a cancellation.
Right.
It's not they're not going to pay themselves that money. They're just going to erase it like a jubilee. That's literally what we were talking about this off air, but you know, this goes back all the way into, you know, BC 5000, where there were jubilees where people would write off debt and they'd reset the credit system.
Right.
So I mean, that's basically what it is. Now, I haven't heard anyone mention the revenue clause and how that may play an effect on it, but I will say this: when you spend money like this or you cancel out debts like this, what normally happens is inflation, because you're messing with a large segment of the population of the economy. You run into inflation, and that's exactly what happened with the coronavirus relief bill and the PPP loans and the other. When money gets spent like this on a large level, you get hyperinflation in those areas, and it trickles down into the rest of the economy.
So maybe let's tell people to save their money or invest it instead of spending all of it.
Well, I mean, they've raised the interest rates, and I think they aren't intending to raise them any higher until after the midterms. But if they continue to raise them and interest rates keep going up, it will disincentivize loans, and in that way you will get a curbing of, I think, hyperinflation. But you still
Is
are
that a
sitting
bad
at
thing?
almost 10%
To
inflation.
disincentivize these predatory loans that kids, in essence, sign up for before they know what they're doing and follow them around for the rest of their lives and multiply in ways they never imagined?
Well, you know, we also talked about this. At the end of the day, if you have a federal government program whereby it can't fail, same with subprime mortgage markets, same with anything else the federal government promises to underwrite,
Health insurance.
you get hyper ballooning cost in that market that no one can actually afford, and it's because they're giving loans to people that probably shouldn't have taken the loan and couldn't have gotten the loan but for the federal government guaranteeing the payback. And so you run into, they call it in economics, I believe they call it the broken window theory. But at this point, without even trying to explain that as someone who didn't go to math school for a reason, you just have to accept that it is what it is, right? I mean, I'm not going to sit here and scream at the top of my lungs. We sent $54 billion to Ukraine, so why am I going to complain about a couple billion being spent on Americans for once?
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard for me to understand why people are so upset about people's loans being forgiven. We talked about the logical fallacy of, well, it's not fair because people before that paid off their student loans, and I made that argument to Ruby, who has student loans. And by the way, just as an aside, I think it's ridiculous that we are lending people like Ruby, a single Hispanic female who has never undergone any type of credit transaction in her life, no credit cards, limited bank accounts, just entering college, $40,000 a year to go to Baylor, and we're buying a mattress right now, arguing back and forth with a micro lender about $3,000 or $4,000, and I'm a practicing lawyer with an income who owns a house, and they're arguing with me about a couple $1,000, and we're going to credit Ruby with $40,000 a year immediately for student loans.
Sign on the dotted line. It's insane.
It's
Did you get the
mind-boggling
purple
to me.
mattress?
No, but we got purple sheets. You'll be happy to know.
The purple
we got
mattress is where it's at.
Tempur-Pedic. Okay, so back to student loans. So I don't think that we use the example, let's take it to the extreme. Someone has died by an unfortunate incident. Another person is about to die from this same unfortunate cause. You have an opportunity to save them. Do you not save them because the first person has already died and it wouldn't be fair to save the second person? No, I think you save the second person.
I mean, realistically, the 10,000, that's like someone drowning and you give them a high five. You're like, high five, it's a nice, you'll be okay.
Right.
And then you just leave them to drown. So, I mean, it doesn't, there may be certain people that have a lower amount of debt that maybe they didn't complete college and so they just had 10,000, 15,000 in debt in the first place. It may really help those people, which, great if it does. But for someone that went to graduate school, a doctor, a lawyer, I know lawyers that are paying on student loans that had graduated 36, 7, 38 years ago. I mean, they're still paying on them.
There's examples of people who borrowed 40, 60,000 and now they owe over $100,000 because of the way that the penalties and interest work.
Well, and the interest is compound interest.
And
so
nobody understands that when you're signing up
accrues.
for it. And what choice do you have? Go to school or not go to school? You're not going to negotiate those terms. We're going to talk about how to negotiate terms in the second segment that you may think you can't negotiate. But I was fortunate to have a father who invested in my education. I was looking at the list of top 100 most expensive schools recently, and I cracked the top 10, I think, in undergrad and law school, GW and Penn. And so I have no concept of student loans and their predatory nature except through my wife, but I'm in no position to complain about somebody else getting loan forgiveness. In fact, it benefits my family personally.
Right.
And I think it's ironic that a lot of these Republicans are getting pinged with their own student loan debt forgiveness that they've taken advantage of that are complaining about others getting this forgiven.
Yeah, and it goes back to the triple P. I mean, when those loans came out, they were going to be loans with the possibility of forgiveness. And if you run through even the Republican list of congressmen and senators who received PPP loans, they got millions and millions of dollars forgiven.
Yeah, loan is almost a misnomer. I mean, we have a client right now in family law, dissolution of marriage, who was given millions by the government, millions of dollars, and we call it a PPP loan.
It's so funny. It's mind-boggling to me. We spend a lot of money, and at the end of the day, when you spend money like this, it's really when you print money in this way, you get inflation. There's no way around it. When you create money out of thin air, it causes the price of everything to expand with the supply of money that's out there. But if you pull it back in, you're immediately going to have the exact opposite effect, a crashing effect, like a bubble bursting.
U.S. economics here on the first segment of The Legal Fix. It's time for a short break.
Time to wake up.
We'll be back to answer your tough legal questions, so call our hotline at 936-900-2381. And when we return, we will talk about popular contract terms. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I'm Bruce Tuff, principal of the Tuff Law Firm. We are a full-service law firm serving the greater Woodlands area and the greater Houston area. Contact us at 281-681-0808. We're tough for you.
Ask for your favorite songs using WhatsApp. The number 936-900-2381.
Hey, Hey, I'm the extra medium deal, the golden boy, Jeremy Hall, here with BW. We are the boys. If you have a question, call our hotline, 936-900-231. Today, we just finished discussing U.S. economics and the impact from student loan forgiveness. Now we're going to dive into contract terms, how to read a contract. A lot of people, when they read contracts, whether it's with a cell phone provider or do we have a phone call? Okay.
Oh.
Hey, B-Dub. Hello,
Welcome to
caller.
Legal
Hi.
Fix.
What's your question?
So I'm in school right now, and I just want to know what is the best way for me to pay for it.
Hey,
So,
caller. What's your name?
Angela,
Angela.
Hey, Angela. How are you today?
I can't complain. It's Friday.
Where are you in school?
Lone Star.
Lone Star. Okay. You had a long week in school. Glad for the weekend.
Pardon me?
Hey, Angela, what was your question?
Yeah, I missed the question.
My question is, what is the best way for me moving forward if I need to pay for school? Should I just get a loan, or should I pay for it myself and not have to deal with the loan?
Pay for it yourself and don't have to deal with the loan. Bye. Do you have a lot of Do you have a lot of money? I mean, what are your other options to come up with the money?
I don't have a lot of money. I can afford to pay for like 2 classes at a time.
Could you work?
But I feel like it's a little unfair that I'm a single mom struggling sometimes to pay for my classes just for them to turn around and give money to people for loans.
You know, there are a lot
I
of...
wish they could give me $10,000 to help me pay for it in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's no harm in applying through the federal aid program to see what you qualify for, but realistically, there's so many options out there for what amount to scholarships and opportunities. I mean, they have them for redheads, for blue-eyed, for you name your type of person, and they have a scholarship for you. And they're not hard to obtain. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're willing to put in the effort required to complete the application process, they will give you money. Someone will.
But that's a good point. Could Biden say we're forgiving debt, but for those like Angela who have decided to maybe work and go to school, we're going to give you $10,000 to put towards your education?
If you do that, you're going to flood the market, and it's going to jack the price of schools up drastically. Tuition will hyperinflate just like the price of milk.
From having experienced some of the lending practices associated with student loans, Angela, I think that if you're able to find another way, maybe she was listening on the radio, if you're able to find another way, and for the rest of our listeners, and can avoid taking out a student loan, I would advise you to do that.
It's a cost-benefit analysis, right? You say, okay, if I take out this loan, what is the value of the job that I know that I can obtain at the end of the loan, at the end of the schooling system? And if you believe that the cost-benefit is there, then you should potentially go forward, because debt is nothing more than a collateralization of your value. Right?
I think a lot of people said it's worth it.
Debt. Yeah, you're leveraging that debt to earn more money later with the belief that you can pay it back along the way. So, you know, you have to be willing to make that decision, but you have to decide, is this job actually available? I mean, am I going into a political science degree to go work for the government, to work for a campaign, or am I realistically going to end up as a salesman at AT&T?
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm a salesman at AT&T and I'm not making as much as I thought I was going to make, then I may be in a predicament having obtained that degree with loans.
You need Joey Biden. Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you for the question.
Papa
I've still
Joey.
got a little music going in my earphones.
Yeah.
If we have an opportunity to turn that down. But we're going to move on to
Have
talk about
sound.
contract terms. So whether it's a student loan, whether it's your cell phone agreement, or whether it's the waiver to go on the bungee course or the ropes course at the State Bar Summer School that we went on, people are encouraged. Hurt. Yeah, the harnesses are very tight. People are encouraged to just flip to the last page and sign.
Yeah, shrink
not
wrap.
read the terms.
They call it shrink wrap,
Shrink-
bubble wrap.
Click wrap on the internet. Scroll to the bottom, click here.
Before you use your phone and it updates, you have to click I accept and agree to all the terms you've put out in 65 pages on my little cell phone.
How often do you read the terms and conditions, BW, as a practicing lawyer?
Realistically, I don't read them when I click agree, but I look them up to see if anything interesting, because there's always someone that actually reads them and they're like, oh, Facebook just released this new agreement and this clause is very important for you to review. This isn't good, right? And then you read them.
Post this on your wall and it immediately nullifies it for eternity. And then everybody, all of your grandparents do it.
Yes. I've never done that, but you can, when they do that, when they do those updates, you look for them, you click agree anyway, but then you look for them online in any of the legal articles out there or blogs out there. And then you can go into the settings and adjust the settings based upon what you've learned from that new shrink wrap.
That sounds like a lot of work that most people probably don't engage in.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of weird how your advertisements are about things that you were literally just thinking about, right? You're like, you didn't even say it out loud, but you're like, I don't even.
Why are they showing me this? Yeah, they know us all too well, better than we'll ever know until Judgment Day. Why do people not read these contract terms? Is it because it's too intimidating and they can't understand it, or is it because what are they going to do if they recognize something that they don't like?
Hell, I can't understand them. You know, I get paid to read contract terms or to help revise contract terms, and often I can't understand half of what's in them.
Here's an attorney contract on the screen here, and at the top, let's talk about the words in quotes. These are called defined terms, BW, and why are these useful to us in writing a contract for the reader and user?
Well, it simplifies. If you can say the client employs the firm, it's a whole lot easier than saying Jeremy Lee Hall employs Tough Law Firm PLLC over and over and over again. So you define the terms in quotes, and now you can simplify them to common language that everyone agrees and understands to from the outset.
It's a shortcut.
Yeah, and realistically it creates, cookie cutter forms where you don't have to change everything every time. You just have to change the material terms, like who the contract's between, what the contract is for, how much the contract involves. So it simplifies it.
Right here may intimidate some people. It doesn't say Bob goes to the store. It has a very complex first sentence that's full of defined terms and doesn't read like a children's book or something that we want to read. So some people may turn off here, but I would encourage you guys to keep going. One thing that I like to do in my contracts for you contract writers out there is put the effective date as effective when the last party signs below. There is nothing more aggravating than constantly changing an effective date of a contract based on additional terms being exchanged, delays in closing, somebody didn't sign on the date, and having to go back in, update a draft, send another email just to change a date in something is something that you don't need to do. Just make it effective when the last party signs below, put a date next to each signature block. So terms are defined. Then we'll scroll down a little bit, Carlos, because I want to talk about some other common terms to the very bottom. There's a couple of things at the bottom of contracts that you'll see and that you'll recognize. First, stop at the highlight there, please. Dispute resolution. So a lot of contracts have binding arbitration, which saves big companies from being sued in court by Joe Blow, who's aggravated and now takes him to court, makes him spend a bunch of money. So if you say, hey, if your child dies in this ziplining accident, you're subject to binding arbitration where there's maximums of recovery, you don't get to put on evidence. Will that hold up? Are you subject to that because you scrolled to the end and didn't read your agreement in Galveston, BW?
If you have an arbitration clause, you're basically stuck with it. There are a few ways that you can get out of it, but I have failed in Harris County to get out of it before, and there have been plenty of times where I felt that it was a contract of adhesions, that it was it was a type of contract that was completely unfair. There was disparate bargaining power between the superpower and the little guy. And
so that's going to save you.
Yeah. No, nothing will save you from an arbitration clause, just about. And the point of arbitration is, one, these arbitrators are not judges, they're not elected, they're selected, and they're usually paid for by the people that put these into their clauses, right? These arbitration clauses in. And it's very cost prohibitive. Arbitration is much more expensive, and even though it's binding, it's much more free flow, which allows the big guy to have another advantage while you're paying $60,000, $70,000 for just the arbitration expenses of weeks and weeks of arbitration. they've already set that up in their budget anyway.
Right,
The
and they're
from the
used to
outset
that
of that-
process. It's
from
home
the
court
outset of that
advantage for
club.
them.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to hit a couple other things and then give you some time at the end for hot topics. So dispute resolution, look at the legal construction. So this is often a little bit up, Carlos. This is often called severability, number 9. So if any term in the contract is held to be unenforceable, like we just mentioned, arbitration, rest of the contract stands. You can sever scratch out that one portion, rest of the contract is good. You've had an opportunity to discuss it. Basically, I've had an opportunity to consult an attorney. You can't use the excuse, oh, I didn't know what it meant. Oh, I'm not an attorney. That goes to your disparate bargaining power. Hey, I've had an opportunity. We're standing at the desk at the hut getting ready to go on a zip line. I haven't had an opportunity to discuss it with an attorney, but for the fact that I am an attorney, so I'm signing that, and they know people are signing it not having had that opportunity.
Yeah, and my wife and I's conversation revolved more around how much it cost to put 4 kids and 2 adults on that thing than it did about whether or not we would die when we got on it.
Maybe calling local counsel and talking about the contract terms. Then at the bottom, this provision I like. I make sure this is nice and beefy in my contracts. Binding contract. So we're going to go to that highlighted portion, Carlos. It says this contract constitutes the parties' only agreement, supersedes any prior understandings between them, written or oral, regarding the subject matter, fully integrated, supporting the Four Corners Doctrine. Why is this important, BW?
Integration clauses mean that no outside information will come in. The parole evidence rule will control.
Can anything crack that armor?
Rarely. A material term that obviously was missing but that was abided by, and so there's some kind of history of that term being effectuated, even though it wasn't written, is one way around it. But it's rare. I mean, the parole evidence rule is as old as time itself in a way, and very rarely are you going to get a Texas judge to go outside of the parole evidence rule.
Then underneath that, you understand all the terms to be fair and accurate. You fully understand them. You're of sound mind, and they're an accurate representation of your agreement and any of your successors or assigns. So that pretty much covers all of the stock excuses that people would say, oh, well, I didn't understand it. Oh, well, it wasn't actually fair. I didn't have time to read it. I didn't have time to consult an expert. It's all right there. You signed right underneath saying that you agree to all those things. Let's take a quick look at the waiver, Carlos, if we can, and we'll talk about some terms that, and then you have the signature blocks underneath that as well, and we'll see this on the waiver as well. This is where I like to put all the detailed information. Sometimes people put at the top. There's no need to mess up the top again with information that's going to constantly change. Put in the signature block and save the top of your contract. You can reuse the same form over and over.
Yep.
This is a waiver that I made for a friend's lake house where people are going to be wakeboarding on his boat. You can see it's for minors and adults. It basically says that anything that could happen out on the boat, save and except for something in excess of gross negligence. You can't take a machine gun out on the lake and gun the whole boat down and say you signed a waiver, right?
That's intentional, but agreed. Intentional torts and gross negligence, meaning that it was just way out of line.
So
not going to happen.
This is an example of something that I had the other side, the flip side, conversations with people, kids coming to the lake for the weekend, college kids. That I asked to sign this waiver, who said, what is this? Some of them didn't read it. Should I read this? Oh, you're an attorney. You wrote this. I probably have no hope here. I'll just sign it, right?
There you go.
And everybody signed it, and we kept it on file. You can scroll to the bottom, Carlos. Marshawn lynched them right through, but my friend felt safe taking all the people out on the boat. You see terms in here about parents, guardians. If you die, the people that take over your estate can't sue for certain things. You understand the risk. You are, in fact, going to comply with a bunch of terms and conditions while you're out there. So if you cause harm to someone else, you're indemnifying and holding the boat owner harmless for your behavior. Carlos, if we can go to the very bottom, I'll show you what I'm talking about in the signature block. You'll see a lot of initials, acknowledging terms, and then here's the signature block: names, addresses, emails, emergency contacts, any of that information that may need to be in the top of the contract. You just define and refer to it below, put it all in the signature block so people can fill it out nice and easy.
Very, very good.
Okay, that's a waiver. That's a standard contract. You can write on it, folks at home. If you have a pen, scratch it out, write your term in. Oftentimes that flips the script. The person who's handling the contract on the other end oftentimes will have no idea what to do when a customer scratches something out and gives it back to them, and they'll just take it and accept it. So if you say, I don't accept arbitration on this zip line, you scratch it out and give it back, you go on the zip line, you have effectively canceled that contract term because you didn't agree to it.
That's right.
So
Bruce does that all the time. He did that with the printer. That was hilarious. He redlined the entire printer contract. It was beautiful.
Yes.
His handwriting is better than typewriting, so
don't be afraid to pull out that pen, cross out something that you don't like, folks at home.
It's very good.
BW,
Tell
over
me
to
this,
you.
do you know what a Mother Hubbard clause is?
I thought that was a children's book. I think I read that to Remy last night to
So in
make her go to
Texas, the
sleep.
Mother Hubbard clause, which it didn't start in Texas, but the Mother Hubbard clause was basically a catch-all provision for pooling of properties, even if they weren't contiguous but were nearby. And what it allowed...
For oil?
For oil, specifically leases on surface estates to buy, in the mineral estate, to buy the oil up and to drill for it, right?
Yeah, I do know Mother Hubbard.
The Mother Hubbard case, what actually happened, they did this catch-all provision, and because of it, even though they struck nothing in the intended property, they went sideways and hit oil in another property, and they got sued, and they said, we didn't lease this property to you, and the Mother Hubbard clause was upheld as having been part of the agreement. And so they were able to drill on this other, not really intended land, and that was the Mother Hubbard clause.
From diagonal
And
drilling.
from that,
What's
do you know what the
called?
Pew clause is?
Pew clause, like Pepe?
Yeah, like Pepe Le Pew. No, P-O-U-G-H, I believe is how you spell it.
Okay.
I think.
Tell me.
That clause says that you can't pool the resources. So if you're the owner of the mineral estate and you say, I'm going to lease this section to you, but you don't want them to pool other sections so that you can later on lease that to someone else and make more money, they're not allowed to do so. And so it always comes back to how much can you get out of one contract. If you're in the four corners of it, these clauses affect and limit or expand the amount of land, usually is what it amounts to, the amount of land that can be drilled on.
You can make the value of the contract exponentially different if it's one buyer versus the whole world of buyers, and it all depends on that clause.
Those clauses, right. And millions and millions of dollars have been spent in legal fees fighting over clauses just like that.
And it's better to
where
have it
a
on,
comma falls.
have an attorney on the front end, draft it, make sure that you get that in there. Okay,
We're out
BW,
of
we've
time,
got to wrap
so-
up. Do you have any parting thoughts for us today on the Boys episode?
Yeah, big deal. I hope you're having fun over in your motherland.
Yeah,
where is that?
Mother Hubbard. That
Yeah.
sounds like what the eraser says when she stubs her toe. Mother Hubbard. Jim and Etley.
Order in the court. Yeah, so
Bruce,
Kevin
come back
Spacey
and see
trial
us.
October 6th. Keep an eye out for that. That's going to be a very big deal. This is a very big case. That's two celebrities going at each other related back to something that happened before I was born. And of course, thank you guys for watching The Legal Fix.
Yeah, thank you for watching The Legal Fix by The Tough Law Firm. Call us at 281-681-0808 or visit toughlawfirm.net or hit us up in the comments.
Is it my turn? Catch past episodes and highlights on our website and YouTube channel.
Connect with us on Facebook, Insta, and listen live on Spotify and 91.1 FM, The Bows. Fridays at
Bows.
noon. I'm the Golden Boy, Jeremy Hall. He's Boy Wonder, Brandon Riley. We're the boys.
The boys.
See you next week on The Legal Fix.